In terms of upgrades, the Pixel 7 has a few important improvements that do round out the better of the two 2021 series handsets, but where does it stack up? Find out in this, our full review of the Google Pixel 7. Thanks for watching 9to5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. Google seriously put the Pixel 6 on a diet when firming up the Pixel 7 design and chassis, and the changes might not seem huge, at least until you see these two devices side by side. As someone that has used the Pixel 7 for a year daily, the difference when switching over to the Pixel 7 was actually more substantial than I had expected. Without a case, you can tell right away that the dimensions have been altered, but it's quite hard to tell in some ways just where. The screen is marginally smaller, but the trim bezels mean you're only losing 0.1 inches of workable space, and it's all the better for it in many respects. It certainly feels very much like the Pixel 6a in the hand, which means manageable, at least when compared to the still mammoth Pixel 7 Pro. It's not quite as small, but it's in that happy medium at 6.3 inches versus 6.1 on the 6a and 6.7 on the 7 Pro. That said, while the design changes I like, I'm actually quite disappointed that the matte black side rails have been removed here. This little touch helped add a little bit of extra grip on the Pixel 6, but like an optical illusion did make those bezels seem a little bit larger on last year's version, at least on all sides of the device. The lack of contrast between the frame and the camera bar and that rear chassis colour is also less pronounced here on the Pixel 7 for better or worse. By fusing the metal side rails into the camera bar on the Pixel 7, it feels more cohesive, but definitely instantly less identifiable, at least to my eye, with a loss of that black bar separator. It's not a negative, as Google has moved that camera section downwards, which I think is better, and it aligns a lot more closely with the Pixel 7 Pro this year. This, combined with the size decrease and downward shift of those side buttons on the right side of the phone, means that last year's cases though are actually incompatible with this new model. Reaching the power button and volume keys is just a tad easy this time, which is also great given the often ballooning size of smartphones. Google seems to be moving away though from its playful googly colours that have helped distinguish the Pixel lineup since 2017, but the lemongrass is certainly striking in its own right, and I'm glad it's the option that I have. In certain lighting it looks like a soft white with a light gold side. It's kind of a cohesive combination that I didn't anticipate. If you do care about fingerprints or smudges, I think this is going to be the colour to choose, as it seems to hide blemishes and grime with aplomb. I will applaud these little extra touches like the colour-coded charge port as sort of inconsequential, but important extra details that do show Google is setting on a distinct device identity, for better or worse. For those wondering about the display, at 6.3 inches, I still would be hesitant to call the Pixel 7 screen small. It's, however, an improvement over the Pixel 6. It is still capped at 2400 by 1080 pixels, but it's clean, it's sharp, and the brightness has taken a step up this time around. I will say that the brightness level wasn't necessarily for an issue, at least with my time using the previous generation, and I'm not seeing any pronounced colour shift or tinting issues with my own review unit until you get to really, really low brightness, but that said, it's very, very minor. This was an issue though that some people encountered quite prominently on the Pixel 6. I will say 90Hz is still ultra smooth and consistent, but side by side with that 120Hz Pixel 7 Pro panel, and you can see the obvious differences, but overall Android 13 runs super slick here. Google though should be looking to upgrade to 120Hz at some point in the future. 1080p though, that's absolutely fine at this size, but until then a flat 90Hz screen will have to suffice. The biggest and most important upgrade you're wondering about, alongside the signal strength, more on that later, is bound to be that in-display fingerprint scanner. I'm pleased to say that this change is immense. While I personally found the Pixel 6 Pro scanner to be reliable, it was quite slow compared to the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S21 and the S22. The speed increase is evident as soon as you've registered digits, but it isn't exactly lightning. Everything from the registration process to the placement in the Pixel 7 display remains identical to the previous Model 2. It's not clear if the Pixel 6a's in-display scanner is being used this time, but the speed and reliability increase, even with a cheap screen protector applied, is actually obvious. One anecdotal sign though is that the Pixel 7, like the 6a, can actually only add 4 fingerprints versus last generation's 5. Sure, it's by no means the fastest, but it is improved and more consistent, which is something that couldn't be said for everyone last year. In terms of software, Android 13 does come pre-installed, as you'd expect, and for the most part it's identical to the build found on previous generations, with a few extra exclusive tweaks that have been added to differentiate this new series. A number of these are set to come to older Pixel models in the coming months, including the clear calling function. For the most part though, determining speed and performance improvements in your favourite applications or just that main system view are pretty hard to see. I sometimes think I can spot boosted performance as per Google's own claims, then I doubt myself as the Pixel 6 has never really felt like a slouch, at least in my opinion. Everything I would ordinarily do or you may ordinarily do on a smartphone is catered for, and even when I do things like decide to play some mobile games, it's a very pleasant experience. Even with upgrades, raw performance still doesn't seem like a core tenet of Tensor G2, but with other benefits such as stupendously accurate voice typing and better processing times for images courtesy of that Pixel Neural Core for even more googly focus points. I still feel like these functions and features would wow a non-tech focused person, at least more so than someone who knows the difference between the very latest Qualcomm or MediaTek processor. On the other hand though, it is really disappointing to see that a 5nm manufacturing process has been used yet again, which does put the Tensor G2 at a disadvantage compared to the leading pack on Android. Google does need to continually improve performance levels on future chipsets, as there's no reason for the Pixel series to be left behind, but I will say that Tensor G2 is a solid performer, at least from my use case perspective. With regard to the Pixel 7's camera, well, it's still a solid dual camera system that produces tack-sharp, contrast-heavy images, and image quality takes a step down on that ultra-wide, but that's to be a given that far wider field of view and low resolution. The Google Camera app has been tweaked here with new toggles and the addition of haptic feedback for zoom levels in that main camera UI. The most notable change found on the Pixel 7 camera though is actually in the processing times for images and videos. At no point did I feel like the Pixel 7 offered any drastic quality changes though over the Pixel 6. 50 megapixel shots are still pixel binned down to 12.5 megapixels, and disappointingly there's no full resolution or pro mode for photography, at least at this stage. Super res zoom has been improved, which is especially useful when you crop in at 2x zoom and above. My advice though would be to use this function sparingly, as the digital crop cannot compete with the periscope zoom of the Pixel 7 Pro. When taking night shots though, the Pixel 7 has a new toggle that lets you choose the exposure length. This has been available on other devices from other manufacturers, but a delightfully googly animation is available here when taking those long exposure images. Last year's move as well to a much larger sensor has helped tremendously, and it seems that the tuning has improved overall throughout all of these camera systems. The biggest outright upgrade though is the new 11 megapixel selfie camera found in the punch hole on the Pixel 7. It's not even just in stills where this makes a difference either, as all lenses on this phone are now supporting 4K 60 video, including that front facer. Processing times for images are still not quite instant though in all situations, even with that new Tensor G2 processor. I have spotted the loading icon on more than a few occasions. It is less pronounced, with most images being completed by the time you open up the image preview pane though. Google claims that this is improved with low light shots, and it's evident that that has improved here too. Cinematic mode is part of that new camera functions that have joined for video, and this effectively adds fake blur effects to each frame of your video recording. It is limited to 1080p at 23 or 24 FPS, and while the subject separation when taking portrait mode stills is excellent, in video the story is very different. Even with slow moving subjects, you can clearly see the halo or cutout effect that is obvious and distracting. For still subjects though, it's a bit better, but if smartphone manufacturers think they can replace or replicate cinema camera effects with software, then we're absolutely way off at this stage. I'm sure it will improve over time and as the software progresses, but for now I have to say that this mode might be fun for a few minutes, but should be avoided. Video though on Pixel has always been a strong suit, and it continues this year with excellent OIS combined with similarly impressive EIS. HDR video recording is a nice inclusion, but I'm not sure many people will benefit from larger video file sizes without first having a screen that can outplay the content accurately. That said, you can just play back through your phone if you do want to experience HDR video. Dipping the battery by almost 10% from 4,614 mAh to 4,355 mAh is a risky play by Google here with the Pixel 7, and this decision was likely forced given the shaved device dimensions. I was especially concerned as the Pixel 6 was a 2-day phone for me. I'm a fairly light user throughout the regular week and mainly use my phone more heavily in an evening. That said, even after a week, I'm left impressed by the longevity of the regular Pixel 7. By no means is this a battery beast, but it can withstand even my heavy days of usage without any major issues. I'm regularly heading to bed with around 25 to 35% battery remaining, and this includes mainly texting, social media like Twitter, email, some Google Maps use, and regular short video calling on a regular day. When deviating into gaming and recording lots of 4K 60 videos, like on most Android phones, the battery percentage level can take a nosedive. However, the Pixel 7 has been a faithful companion during my review period. Maybe eventually we'll see iOS level lifespan as the Pixel series and Tensor series progresses. At this stage though, it's solid if a little bit behind the best in the business. Google does list the Pixel 7 as limited to 20 watts when using the 30 watt rated official charger. In our experience, it can vary from 18 to 21 watts when using, or at least when charging via a cable, and this means that charge speeds are far below other flagship phones here in 2022. From my experience, it takes around an hour and 30 minutes to go from 0 to 100%, but that might not be a massive problem if you are charging overnight and using that adaptive battery or adaptive charging function. One thing I've not mentioned is the new software-based Face Unlock, which is now available on the Pixel 7 as an extra security option alongside the improved Fingerprint scanner. It's not quite as secure as the Pixel 4's 3D depth scan, but an advanced machine learning model, an improved wide-angle selfie camera, and that Tensor G2 all combine to bring Face Unlock back to Pixel phones. Any worries you might have about the speed are probably unfounded. The registration process is not extensive, as you just lift your head and your chin within the viewfinder to add your facial print. Once you have completed this process and activated the function, then you'll see a dynamic color-themed animation around the selfie camera to indicate that a scan is taking process. Unlocking your device is actually super fast and slick, and it certainly leaves the fingerprint scanner in the dust. That said, in difficult lighting conditions, it can fail, or it may take multiple goes, which is why you may prefer that fingerprint scanner for unlocks. Google has limited this to device unlocks too. Your facial scans can't actually be used to make purchases. For those, you'll still need to continue using that improved in-display scanner for purchase confirmation. A major problem that also faced many with the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro was the, at times, awful signal and device connectivity. This would often mean slow loading time to web pages, drops in reception, call failures, plus much more. I'm tentatively suggesting that I think this has been fully resolved with the usage of the new Samsung 5300 modem. Stable connections and solid connections are something that I instantly noticed, even in the same areas I go to where I would have or predominantly encounter issues with the Pixel 6. That said, you will need to take this with a grain of salt, as I haven't necessarily been to all of the areas. You may encounter things that I can't experience, but overall I do genuinely think that these signal issues have been resolved, at least somewhat. I'm getting faster speeds and more consistent and stable connections with this newer device. So to wrap up, transitioning from the Pixel 6 to the Pixel 7 was one that I expected to be fairly uneventful and not really much of an upgrade per se. In actual fact though, I will say that the changes here are almost enough to justify that jump from the previous model to the new version, especially if you encounter problems. I was quite happy to call the Pixel 6 last year the best Google made phone to date. Rolling that back and tempering expectations, I think the Pixel 7 is better in almost every regard when you factor in what was deemed below par or substandard on previous Pixel devices. To put it simply, at $599, the Pixel 7 is an even better package this year than the Pixel 6 was back in 2021. All of the major bugs that were present in Android 12 seem to be squashed and resolved, and the problem areas and sore points like the signal and that fingerprint scanner have been addressed without major detriment to the end product. This, I think, is the new default recommendation when people are seeking a new Android phone, and that's a bold claim. That said, I'd love to know your thoughts. Let us know down in the comment sections what you think of the Pixel 7 down below. Until next time though, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Damien with 95 Google, and I will speak to you later.